Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your East Oakland advocate. Well, the Baltimore Bridge collapse. That was a disaster that I always kind of worried about with the Bay Bridge right here in the Bay Area because um, did you see the video of the actual impact that ship uh, when it hit that pillar? It hit a main pillar that supported that bridge there, and it was just a chain reaction, and it was pretty devastating. And we know that there are at least eight people missing. Those were pavement workers working on the bridge during the overnight hours. Um, but I want to also uh, remind folks that we have a very similar situation here in the San Francisco Bay Area. In fact, we had an actual impact by a cargo ship, an outbound cargo ship. In fact, it was uh, Cosco Busan, and it impacted one of the pillars for the Old Bay Bridge at the time. Not the new section, the old section, which no longer exists. But uh, it tore open the hull of that um, uh, cargo ship, and it was going out, so it was really full. 53,000 gallons um, was reported to have spilled into the San Francisco Bay waters at the time. And I had dogs at the time, and I used to go down to Emeryville. In fact, the place I went to was called Emery Point or Point Emery, but it was just right around the corner from where Chevy's and Carlos Murphy's and all of those restaurants were. But anyway, I went down there that morning. It was crazy to watch things from the shore side. And I was lucky to even get there. I was surprised that I was able to get to Emery Point. Uh, but I couldn't let my dogs down on the beach because it was just all of the bunker oil, which is the fuel oil for the ships. It's heavy and thick. It has a real heavy, sulfury, tar smell to it. And it was just covering everything on the beach. So I didn't let my dogs out that day because I didn't want them to get in it and then track it into my new car at the time. Uh, and it was a near disaster, and there was a lot of worry because the Bay Bridge was shut down for several days while Department of Transportation, California Department of Transportation, had to inspect all the pilings and everything associated with that support, the bridge support there, that they didn't allow traffic. If I remember right, it ended up being a whole week of traffic being diverted away from the San Francisco Bay Bridge for those inspections because of that ship. But the cleanup mess and the dead fish and birds and wildlife that washed ashore. And I was gone for several months, and I came back to the Bay Area after some of the cleanup had already been completed. Went back to Emery Point, and it was weird because these uh, um, translucent globs, literally like they look like put it this way, the silicone breast implants. That's what they look like all over the beach, just clear jelly uh, implants, just laying on the beach. When you stepped on it, it was really it was tough. It had toughened up because the mornings were cold there in January, and so it thickened. But that made it easier for the cleanup crews to pick those up and get them off, get them out of the environment, because those are still hazardous materials. And I still didn't let my dogs near the bay waters, because you could still smell the sulfury smell. And the um, the real big concern was the heavy portion, which has the real heavy petroleums in there, sitting on the bottom of the bay. What kind of devastation was that going to do to the the marine life right there? Shellfish. You're right next to a marine sanctuary for mud shrimp here in California, and so that could be very devastating to that entire mud shrimp colony reserve. And it's a protected zone, so it's a federally protected zone. So that's what makes it even worse. And the bay, San Francisco Bay, serves as a migratory water route for a lot of waterfowl. And then also a lot of that stuff got washed out uh, because the Golden Gate Bridge is not that far away. We're only talking 10 miles um, to the to outside the gate, and then being flushed out into the Pacific Ocean. So there was a lot of stuff that was happening at the time, and the entire thing. There was a big difference between the two, but the whole thing back in Baltimore, that one was avoidable. From what news accounts that I've also been hearing about, the ship was having electrical issues prior to pushing off from the dock, leaving the port. And um, in the case of San Francisco Bay Area, this one wasn't any error on the mechanics of the ship. It was the driver error on this one. In this case, the pilot. It was fog, and they just miscalculated just a little bit, and little bit more push on from the outgoing tides could make a big difference, and it did make a big difference. And then being off by just a few degrees, he, instead of being in the shipping lane, the designated channel, the designated deep water channel for those ships, for the cargo ships, they have a specific channel that they have that's dug out for them, and it's maintained so that they don't run aground. But the important thing is that they have to stay within a very, very small area, because we're talking about something that's only about 200 feet wide. And um, yeah, so they got to stay in there, and they have to sometimes watch the tide. If it's a very loaded cargo ship like Cosco Busan was that morning that left Oakland, it was running heavy, as they say, meaning a full load of everything. Cargo containers were full, and then also tanks, fuel, bunker oil were full. So it was running heavy. So that means it was real imperative that it stayed in the shipping channel, and it didn't. But because of it running heavy, it was able to skid across a lot of the shallower section, ending up hitting the piling, ripping the side of the ship open. Uh, Fortunately, there was enough space between the actual physical bridge piling and the diversion area bumpers, fenders that always surround a main pillar. And the same thing at Baltimore. That ship was running heavy, and unfortunately lost power. And so when you lose all your electrical, you'll lose control of the ship completely. from what I hear, they issued a Mayday, an immediate Mayday, and so there was literally nothing that the ship could do, and this is a fear and a worry that I've always had, especially with ports like Los Angeles, which has bridges nearby. Here in the Bay Area, we have the San Francisco Bay Bridge and also the Richmond Bay Bridge. And if you go further up, Antioch Bridge. So there are a lot of bridges that ships could hit right here in the Bay Area, and that would be devastating. Number one, the traffic, because when um, Cosco Busan hit the Bay Bridge, it was I was getting ready to leave town anyway, but because I was moving to North Carolina, uh, but I was watching the reports of traffic and then seeing what was going on. It's like, man, this is going to be really bad for the Bay Area for at least a year, while they're trying to figure everything out. And then the bridge did open a week later, the week that I left, and um, even then, people were very worried about the bridge. Are you sure it's going? We don't want to fall off into the bay. So there was always that concern. But it's a way of life here for a lot of the cities that have receiving shipping facilities like Oakland, Port of Oakland Terminal. Uh, we have the Port of Los Angeles, San Diego, and several others up and down the coast here. And all of them have bridges somewhere along there because those arteries have to, main arteries are going to cross over water, unfortunately. Um, and if you think about it, at the time when the Baltimore Bridge was built, way back in the, from what I heard, the early 70s, about 72, but the structural engineering you're talking about was from the late 60s. So bridges have to be constructed very differently these days, and we can see how devastating a bridge collapse can be because of that Baltimore Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse was caught on video, and you watch it. It is devastating, and it is truly awe-inspiring also at the same time to see such devastation unfolding live on camera. And again, even though a lot of safeguards are put in place, there's always that one little chance of something really bad that wasn't calculated into the project. And that's what happened at Baltimore. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area on the Old Bay Bridge, we were lucky that there was enough space that created a cushion so that the ship didn't actually hit the actual structural foundation for holding up the Bay Bridge. Because the Bay Bridge, if you remember, was built back in the late 30s, so that's even older engineering, but it did hold up against a heavy ship, a very heavy cargo ship, fully loaded and fully fueled. But that's always been a big concern for cities and economies that rely on those bridges for the transfer of goods and services. But we see the devastation, and it's going to take some time to rebuild that bridge back, because they're talking over a mile of bridge to reconstruct and recreate in a very short amount of time. So we'll see how quickly they can get it put back together, because that's devastating the economy back there in Baltimore. Thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.